Welcome to Cinematic Crossroads, where two different movies come together to reveal surprising connections. Each episode pairs movies from different countries, eras, or genres, but somehow they end up speaking to each other. Or at least we think they do. Hi again!
Hello, Oscar.
How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. Yeah, how are you?
Very well, very well. And which films do we have today?
Today we have Ryan Coogler's Sinners, which came out at the back end of last year. Onur
Ünlü. Ünlü.
Ünlü's Gildst the Even, which came out in 2013. This surrealist, black and white, neo-noir revenge story.
I think both films are uniquely paired due to their blend of supernatural elements with profound social critique. While Sinners uses horror to address generational trauma and racism, Gildst the Even employs absurdist humor to explore universal anxieties. They have a shared narrative there, and they're both experimental in their own way. What is your take?
I don't think the pairing is immediately obvious. I think with Sinners, the horror element came to me as a surprise. It wasn't really marketed as such for me. And maybe it was able to be seen through the heaps of red posters and, I guess, drip feeding this vampire story through. But it was very much a surprise. And even if you knew it already, watching the film, the first half, you might have already forgotten what the film was eventually going to turn out to be. Whereas with Thou Gild'st the Even, I found that the absurdist humor and this element of the supernatural was very much immediately obvious. It was present from the get-go with this humorous take on suicide, these really funky edits of characters, trying to not take itself too seriously while also eventually making these more profound existential inquiries, which is also another reason why which is the main reason I'd say these films don't seem to marry as obviously, because Thou Gild'st the Even tackles more existential questions, whereas Sinners feels like it tackles more immediate political questions, you know.
And how did you like the films?
Sinners is one of my favorite films of the last year. I think it's just phenomenally executed. I love 24-hour stories, and I think the performances are phenomenal. Cinematography is great, and I think the subtext is so rich. It's very, very layered in it, beyond the whole narrative of generational trauma and commodification of African American culture. Like, you can rewatch this film 2 or 3 times and still get more and more out of it.
Where did you watch the film?
I watched it in BFI IMAX.
And where did you watch the other films?
I watched it on my laptop.
Do you think that makes a difference?
Absolutely makes a difference. Yeah, I think if I was with Thou Gild'st the Even, I feel similarly like I would with Sinners, where I think multiple watches would definitely enrich the experience, but at the same time, I had a lot less patience for things, and I don't believe in pacing being an issue ever in a film. I think it's just boring. Like, if it's boring, it's boring. And that's what pacing actually means. People just don't like to call it that because it's a pretentious thing. But there were moments where I thought, quote unquote, the pacing was bad. And that was probably because I wasn't forced to watch it on a screen that's 2,000 the size of me, you know? Like, it's
That's one reason, but I also think there was a lot of local cultural elements that was making film interesting, like the accent, for example. So I think when you don't have this point of view, you might be missing a lot of things. Therefore, it gets a bit boring.
at 107 minutes, you'd think it is like pretty tight. I think it was mainly towards the final act that I was a bit like, there's no core story grounding this. We're just following this man bouncing from woman to woman, from grief to grief, and really there doesn't seem to be a takeaway, really, which comes back to this whole absurdist idea. So I'm not mad about it entirely. I think it's maybe depending on the setting and my missed references, like even the idioms that were literalized, which I couldn't have found funny, yeah, but they were in some cases objectively funny. Anyway, I think they this Camusification of the story, ultimately I wouldn't have melded with anyway, even if I watched it in a cinema and I knew everything, because I'm not a big fan of Camus, you know. Or
There's an article about this film, how it relates to Camus.
I think it's almost impossible to, especially in the context of Sinners, separate the action from the subtext, because it was set up so well. You knew that what the themes were before the actual action happened, to give the action all the weight it had. Because if the action was, say, 20 minutes in, you would not feel the same way about it as you would otherwise. These guys are setting up a club for black people, by black people, and you see it from the ground up, and you know that even within this black community, there is a sense of corruption already. So that there are people to be doubtful of and for. Ultimately, I think the subtext runs through, and it's impossible to answer.
So visually, the film features a rich, large format cinematography, IMAX, and ultra panavision with color palettes, strong visual contrast, heightened supernatural horror. And it is the first female diameter photography, the first UAP shot 65 millimeters in IMAX format.
But once you are used to the setting and the context, forget even the dialogue, the sound design from the score to the soundtrack, and how that's meshed in with all the Foley and everything. I think that was a lot more vivid than a lot of the color palette. Although the color palette was very strong, very consistent, it wasn't like as novel in my eyes. Even with the Wanna, the scene in the juke joint with Sammy performing his song for his dad, even then, like, the color wasn't what took me away. It was the subtext and the quality of the sound.
Do you think that was the most iconic shot of the film?
Absolutely. Like, I was about to cry just watching that.
Really?
Like, genuinely about to cry.
Okay. I wasn't sold at all.
Really? You didn't enjoy it as an idea, or you just didn't think?
I felt like I'm watching a music video. I didn't buy into the whole idea in terms of the emotional element. I was nowhere there. I'm like, okay, interesting symbolism inserted to the film to make it interesting, which it does.
I don't even necessarily think it's as interesting as it is impactful. I don't think things need to always be profound in what they're saying. Like, but I think what emotionally sold me in that scene, although yes, absolutely, it can look like a music video, was the fact earlier in the film, it even which is why I don't think it's a linear story either. Earlier in the film, we see him coming back to the church to his father's service, where his dad is telling him to put the guitar down. It's devil's work, devil's play. And to then come back halfway through the film, this idea of music being this almost healing idea, this healing mechanism. What the film is trying to say is almost that the music isn't what the devil's play is, it's what the music attracts. It's what this art attracts, which is not your fault, you know? Like, ultimately, what they were making in the juke joint was a very pure experience. Like one of the twins and Annie talked about in when they gave one of the town regulars, not a regular for the juke joint, but someone they knew, a discount on a drink, and then the other twin was like, "What are you doing?" But they know that it's a for the people experience ultimately that they're trying to garner, which it was for the most part until the white devil came along, you know.
Until it wasn't.
Yeah.
Anyway, many people thought like you, it had a significant critical and commercial success. 97, I think, percent approval rating on Rotten Tomatoes. Cinema score quoted A, making it the only horror movie in 35 years of exit polling to receive such a high grade. Grossed over $280 million worldwide against a $90 million budget, become the highest grossing original film since 2010. So it's a very successful film commercially. It was too long. I felt like the editor. I felt like the editor. I don't know. He went sleeping or somehow. I think the first part was unnecessarily long. 137 minutes for a story that could have been told probably 25 minutes less. In my experience, sound mixing was really bad, but that could be the cinema I watched. I wasn't convinced why some characters existed, starting from the Chinese grocery shop. After the film, I thought about it and I can relate more. I did some research, so apparently it was quite common for Chinese society to have this kind of grocery stores in those areas. So their existence is understandable. But what would we miss if they were not there in terms of moving this story forward or deepening?
I think ultimately, you can make the argument that maybe it doesn't serve anything. But they provided the food for the juke joint and all the ingredients and everything, at a short notice. Which is an element of the story you can take out. But what I appreciate about some of the best art I consume is it platforms people and things and careers, and it brings to light certain things that you wouldn't have otherwise known. Hearing an East Asian person with a Southern American accent is something I never thought I would ever hear, But also after watching the film and knowing that was a common example of how like life in the American South.
Onur Ünlü's narrative and visual language. It has a more fragmented, dream-like narrative, and it's heavily reliant on symbolic scenes and absurdist humor. I don't know if we really caught this humorous bits in the film, and the story itself is much less significant than the way it is told.
Like very art housey, because they were such a mishmash, and there's a scene where time stops between them. And they're moving through time, and I think it felt nostalgic to a time that I don't even remember. I haven't lived through, but to an era of cinema that feels very kind of 50s, 60s almost, and then even later when they're talking about Izmir, and there are some shots that feel like documentary storytelling, like they feel very fly on the wall, handheld, creepy in some sense, but also intimate in other ways.
And I think he used zoom as well in some scenes, which I was surprised because he was using almost every trick in the book in that way.
Yeah.
There was the zoom, there was a dolly, there was also handheld shootings. There was a combination of everything.
There's a lot. Yeah. So I think the diverse range of it maybe added to why it, in some ways, I thought the pacing was off. But also it wouldn't have been the same film otherwise if it didn't like make the whole use of its artistic palette, you know. Mm. No, I thought he did a great job, and I think more than him, the visual elements of like the blue and red really helped with the classic storytelling, the differentiation, and I think it was nice to see how like they went on their own separate journeys throughout the film as well. How Stack, I think it was, right? Who survived, the blue twin, who had a family to fight for, and or not to fight for anymore, but he definitely was clearly more in love with his partner, and had a long-standing connection to fight for. How that altered things, and so there was definitely enough depth and range to the characters to cement and justify their positions. So.
Also, the film actually incorporates historical details, like the one we discussed, Chinese American grocery store owners, inspired by real life stores, a mall shop sign hinting at Mexican laborers, and a sawmill later rebuilt as a clan kill site. Character names, Smoke and Stacks, subtly reference the prophet Elijah, suggesting duality and their respective colors. Smoke was in blue, and Stack was in red. They symbolize angelic and devilish aspects. There was a Candyman connection, with apparently a scene featuring an aging Sammy at his Chicago Blues bar. When we saw he was quite old at the end of the film.
Mm-hmm.
It is set on October 16th, 1992, the release date of the iconic black horror film Candyman, linking Sinners to another seminal work of in black horror cinema set in Chicago, where the Smokestack twins once operated for Al Capone.
Did you know about Coogler's deal with the production companies for this film?
I heard that he secured a significant creative control, including final cut privilege, ownership after 25 years,
Yeah.
and first dollar gross.
Yeah, which is unheard of. That's ridiculous. I feel like to be able to ask for this much film and then be like, no, forget the profit. Like once it's in the green, I want a cut from the box office immediately. I think that like that's even like Nolan, that would be a challenge for. I feel like
Films we will be able to watch in cinemas will become more and more like Sinners. They will be more grandiose films, attracting millions of people to the cinema, rather than art house films like Gildst the Even. How did you find the non-ending of the film ending again and again? There were 3 endings in the film.
yeah. I thought it was cool. I didn't mind it. I think
So you didn't leave the cinema?
no, I did not.
Did you leave the cinema? I didn't. Some people left and they didn't see the actual end.
Yeah,
It was easy to miss, so you didn't. That's a good thing.
I see.
You think it was cool? Did it close all the open doors for you in terms of the story?
I don't know if there were many doors left open. Anyway, they had to close. So I think three doors closed is enough by the end. And
If you can't close in 3 endings, probably.
yeah, you probably missed a storytelling element there.
Fair enough. And how did you feel when you left Sinners?
I felt ready to listen to more of my favorite music, which is by a lot of African American artists. You know, like I wanted to go back and revisit the soundtrack immediately. I was very just excited about where cinema is at, which I'm not left feeling a lot of the time, especially when watching a big blockbuster film. And you might be right about blockbusters being the norm that brings people to the cinema and makes cinema still profitable. But ultimately, if all the blockbusters that come out are of this standard, I don't mind that, because, like, I mean, so much of the appeal for indie cinema is that you have to try to find it. You have to try to find these places that put them on and have these curated programs, and it wouldn't have the same charm without this strive for it. So the like, you have to be recommended these things, you know, and you have to actually love films and cinema enough to go out of your way to watch some films, and that's part of what indie cinema is. So I don't mind that as much.
Fair enough. What about Gild'st the Even? How did you find the ending? Was it satisfying?
Immediately, I was quite infuriated by the film. I
You were satisfied that it was over.
satisfied that it was over. Yeah, I was so ready to just move on with my day. I think I was so hungry by that point as well, which might not have played well into my analysis of it. But
It was ambiguous.
everything about the film was I don't know if there was anything that was clear in the film. Like a fully formed idea did not exist in the film,
That's
which is fine.
absurdity for you.
And I don't like absurdity.
Yeah, you say like, well, it shouldn't be absurd that much. I think both films linger with the viewers through their daring fusion of genres. That's for sure. They both have profound thematic explorations and memorable visuals. Coming back to the iconic shots, I think a couple of things that I can tell from Dar Gildst was that the recital of Shakespeare's sonnet, I think that was an incredibly absurd and funny scene. I was laughing out loud when I watched that one. That was brilliant.
That's really good.
I wish you could also understand the accent element in that one. Makes it incredibly funny. So let's rank the films.
Mm-hmm.
Let's give a score. What do you think about Sinners, apart from being the best film we have seen the last year?
I say this. I think it's the best. It's one of the best.
Now you want to step back, right?
I want to step back. I want to step back. Yeah.
Oh, well, it was not that good, was it? It was a good film.
I agree in that, like, the editing is not amazing, but for different reasons. I think it's the pacing is great. I think I was actually really entertained for the majority of the film, and that might have just been the performances and, like, sometimes, yeah, sure, something didn't add to the story, but I was just having fun, so I didn't mind it. What annoyed me editing wise was flashbacks. I just cannot tolerate, like, flashbacks that explain something.
Mm-hmm.
I hate it. There's never a point to it, because it's going back to a moment you have already shown us. So you were showing it again to what, baby, like, to just spoon feed us? Like,
Yeah.
I don't.
Like, why are you belittling my IQ levels?
Yeah. Don't underestimate the audience. It's why I hated Joker so much. I hated that film with a burning passion because of that talk show scene, which is somehow the most iconic part of the film. So yeah, I think that does take away a lot from the film. On second thought, I'd probably leave it at like an 8.
Okay,
Sorry.
8 out of 10.
Out of 10, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think for Sinners, I'll go for. So it's an entertaining film. I'm not a huge fan of vampires, so there's a lot of reference to the vampire classics and stuff. So I'm not impressed by those. So that I was okay. Garlic, nice, okay, eat them all. And it needs to be invited, okay, fair enough. But in terms of the references, he was using that. I think that at some places, the deeper meanings were layered quite in a crafty way. I like those parts.
Mm.
And you actually mentioned that one in the beginning of the talk, that at the time of in 1930s Mississippi, when the racism was there.
I feel like even though there was corruption within the one community, like it was still anything entirely lighter than anything that the vampire side of things was trying to do in terms of sell you this metaphysicality that was so inherently flawed.
There was a scene when they went for shopping. The, in the grocery, the father sent the daughter to the other shop to call his mother back to make the sign. Why there were two shops?
Is it not like that it's their town, basically? It's like how...
No, it's not franchise, it's not branching out, it's not maximizing the cash. One of them is for blacks, the other one is for whites.
No,
I missed that one in the film. Now, and the interesting part of the shooting was the camera went like that, following up following up the daughter from the back.
Yeah.
And then it came back, and this time it was the mother was following the camera. So those things, when I thought about them or found out about them, I was crediting the director. Okay, that was subtle. That was quite making it rich.
And to think about how much thought you'd have to put in the set for a small detail like that is ridiculous. Like the amount.
Oh, we got $90 million. You can probably... So I'm not gonna give credit for these kind of things, but it is a nice. The film, I think, is full of these kind of little things. If you are keen on it, you can find a lot about that. That's why I'm not gonna give you a very low grade. So and also. Find it quite enjoying to watch. Yeah. And I said to my friends, watch it, you'll enjoy it. But when you put a lot of things in one film, it's almost like I'll give you a budget now. And you want to achieve everything in one film. Well, let's talk about the racism, let's put some music, let's put some voodoo, oh, why not the Chinese? A lot of things. It makes it interesting to watch. It's almost like in the Generation Z era, there is 16 stimulants screaming at you. So you get that, oh, there's blood, oh, there's the fight, oh, vampire, this and that. So you watch it, but then when you're trying to handle this many different little topics at the same time, although he does a very good job, it's quite impossible to get it deeper in either of these concepts he's trying to address, in my view. So I think that kind of way film was watched like a music video. The story was there, the way it was married, to me could have been less stimulant, more depth in the characters, and maybe leaving me more work to do as the audience, rather than throwing everything at my face.
Yeah.
So that way, when I left the film, I was thinking more about how entertaining the film was, not how meaningful the film was. So it definitely kept me entertaining. I would watch it again. The music is amazing. I love the songs. I love the way it was shot in some scenes, and Michael B. Jordan was great to watch. There's a lot of jokes there. Yeah, I was very well entertained, so I'll give it 7.5.
Right.
But I wasn't moved by the issues he's trying to handle underneath all these scenes, the music. So the way it was all combined was a bit less impressive for me. Oh, that Gildst the Even, Onur Ünlü's masterpiece.
There are a lot of similarities in what I love about it, in that, like, I wanted to, or after leaving the experience, I was curious about things, and I wanted to, like, Google them, and more analysis based, hence the heaps of Camus, that only afterwards I've come to realize, of course, that's a Camus reference. Like, yeah, it makes so much sense. As a viewing experience, how much fun did I have? I'm not sure. And maybe it's because I was watching it on my laptop that I wasn't as immersed in this magical realism. I think in a cinema I might have been a bit more entertained. But it holds true that I don't like the foundational aspects of this film. Like yeah, sure, it references Camus. I don't like Camus. So there will be like these metaphysical analyses that we just disagree on. I don't believe in absurdism the same way that Camus does, and hence why like I can't fully enjoy the film to I think what it's supposed to be. I can still appreciate it from afar. It's shot incredibly, performed incredibly, ridiculously creative and inspiring in a lot of ways. Like I felt very liberated creatively after, and I don't think a lot of films are able to make you feel like you can do something too, you know. So that was very cool in that regard, and I enjoy it more thinking about it than while watching it. So I can't hate it entirely. I think the film experience is also integral to a review, but it's also 100 minutes of something that I'm not entirely sold on.
And
I would give it a 6.8 out of 10. I think, yeah.
not bad, not bad.
Yeah.
I'll give it a 7.
Yeah.
I think it's a fair score for the film. I think I agree most of the things you said, and especially the part that film is more inspiring for the filmmakers than the audience who doesn't have anything for absurdity.
Mm.
So if you are not a curious person, and if you're not really after watching art house films and stuff, the film probably offers less to you. And maybe that is the reason why he showed the film in the universities and festivals rather than the cinema. I don't think the film would have done a great job box office wise if it was in the cinemas in Turkey. So it is not surprising that he didn't go down to the result. Commercially, it's a very bold choice that he's done. But overall, it did make me feel like to shoot something.
Yeah.
Or to think about the story or the character. But overall, the acting was great. And I think it's not possible to appreciate that unless you actually have the Turkish language understanding of these nuances between accents and stuff. So that was very local. So that's why I probably find it more enjoying to watch than.
I don't also disagree with the acting comment, first of all, but also like say with actors, I think it's remarkable that they all understood the brief, though, and that Ünlü was able to translate his idea before it was on camera, before it was on a screen, to these actors for them to understand this surrealism. I don't think that's a praised enough feat of the direction. Yeah, the performances are great, but that comes down to the direction, I think, in this case.
Yes, and 7 and 6.8 for Gildst the Even.
Yeah.
So, anything else you want to add about? So let's take the last words before our cameras die on us.
I think that I'm content with what I've said about both films.